Hello, my name is Joe and welcome to my channel. Welcome to my living room. Welcome to my elephant painting. It's not a painting of an elephant, obviously. An elephant painted it. So the channel is called Earth 2121 because I will be discussing, or ranting about, the things I think we need to do to be in a better place 100 years from now. Or more accurately, these are the things that if we don't do, I think we'll be in a worse place 100 years from now. Climate change isn't going to give us much of a choice. I mean, if you asked 1,000 people what we should do about anything going forward, you'll get 1,000 different answers. But as the climate changes and we begin to realize what we're up against, I don't think there's going to be too much room for how we approach this. So this will be what I think we need to do. To give you an example, let's say NASA had detected that an asteroid was going to hit Earth in 1 week. And it would hit in the North Atlantic, sending a 20-foot wall of water into New York City. What would we do with this information? I can hear some people like Ted Cruz just being like, oh, you space rock alarmists, it hasn't happened yet, therefore it won't happen. Some people might nitpick at the data. Oh, 20-foot wall of water, you say. Are you sure it couldn't be 19.2? Oh, it could be, therefore all your numbers are wrong, and I don't believe you. But for the most part, people are going to want to get out of New York City before this thing happens. So we'll have a week, we'll evacuate 8, 10 million people, however many it is, and that's pretty much all we can do because we don't have a whole lot of notice. But what if we also knew that when that 20-foot wave came into the city, it wasn't going to leave. It was not going to recede. The water was going to stay up to the 3rd floor. What would we do with that information? Well, with 1 week's notice, still probably not a whole lot, other than people would try to leave town with even more stuff because they know that they won't be able to get back. So I think climate change is going to affect us in the same way. Things will happen with too little notice to really react in time if we don't start planning. So I'll be ranting about what I think those plans should be. I'll be covering topics like housing and urban development. Urban development, the New York City example is a good one because I think we're going to have to move our cities. I mean, some of them actually very far inland. Half of Florida is going to end up underwater. So, and with housing, I think houses of the future should meet 4 criteria. They need to be a lot more affordable than they are now. They need to be made out of recycled materials. Instead of dumping all of our plastic in the oceans, let's build houses out of it. They should be able to produce and or generate, collect, store their own water and electricity. So they should all be off-grid. Can you imagine if we didn't have power lines everywhere? In fact, that'll be a problem as the weather gets worse in more places. There'll be more trees down, more branches down. It'll be windier more often. There'll be more power lines down. We need to get rid of power lines whether we like it or not, so let's make all of our houses off-grid. The 4th thing is, as the weather does get more severe, we'll need houses that can withstand higher winds, more frequent hail, tornadoes in more places, more flooding, and the fallout from wildfires, the soot, and other pollution that we're going to have to deal with, smog and so on. So housing needs an upgrade. Our urban development needs to be rethought. I'll also be covering things like about the ocean levels. How much are they going to rise? What are the current projections? I'm nervous about any kind of future projections because we always seem to understate them. As we get more data and our models get more accurate, they seem to get worse, and which just gives people more room to discount them. Our food supply is at risk, so is our drinking water. So I'll get into that. We need a new economic paradigm. Capitalism is not a very successful system. Capital refers to money, so we'll just call it moneyism. The idea of we shouldn't do anything unless someone makes a profit off it. Well, that's not a good idea, because profiteering, this has led us to the situation we're in today. This is why we have global warming. If it wasn't profitable to pollute, if it wasn't profitable to release greenhouse gases, we wouldn't do it. If the more profitable thing was to take care of the environment, that is what we would be doing, but we're not. Capitalism, therefore, is a failure. So I'll get into what I think should replace it. This also means we need to rethink our jobs. What will the jobs of the future be? How will they work? How should we compensate ourselves? One thing this pandemic has done is really shown us which jobs are critical. People think a lot differently, or they should anyway, about supermarkets and their employees. I imagine parents have a deeper appreciation of our schools. Many for the wrong reasons, because schools also are basically a form of daycare, but they're necessary for parents that have to go to a job. Well, what if jobs of the future were different, such that if you had kids, you didn't need to work as much, and you still got the same as everybody else? So I'll get into that some more. I mentioned the housing that, or future houses that should be able to exist off-grid. That means our whole power grid needs to be rethought, because switching to that can't happen overnight. It's going to take a transition. How do we transition from a system set up for massive amounts of power generation that then goes through massive amounts of distribution to a system where we don't need any of that? So I'll also be getting into plastic by itself. Deserves some videos. Plastic is a major problem. It's part of the reason why our food supply and drinking water will be threatened. But we need to rethink how we approach plastic, what plastics should even be allowed to be manufactured. Because some plastics, part of the problem is they're not recyclable. We need to make plastic that can be recycled, so the industry needs to rethink that. Education of the future needs to change. If we're going to have a different mindset of how our jobs are, or what our jobs are and how they work and so on, what kind of training do people need to function in such a society? I'm also going to address inequality. Wealth inequality has been around longer than capitalism has. We've gone from pharaohs to kings to corporations. There's always been a wealth gap, and those with the wealth have the power, and those with the power abuse it, and they're not taking care of the planet. They shouldn't be allowed to have that power for much longer. But wealth inequality really drives all other forms of inequality, because if there's no money behind it, it can't happen. No funding, no Christopher Columbus exploration. No funding, no Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. So if there's no money behind it, it doesn't happen. So inequality has really been driven by wealth inequality, and I'll get into that as well. So if all of these things, or any of these things, sound interesting to you, please stick around, subscribe, like this video, share it with others. Feel free to comment below. I'm sure I'll read them. I have no idea if anyone's ever going to watch these, so the 2 comments that come in over the next month, I'm sure I'll check them out, and I might even respond. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.